Investment in Tanzania's electricity sector will create expansion opportunities for the bigger Tanzanian economy and possibly even gains for East Africa as well. Now, this is the view of Frost & Sullivan's energy and power analyst, Vincent Maposa. He joins us now from our studios in Cape Town. Vincent, great to have you. Thanks so much for your time. Before we go into specifics, I mean, we know that inflation in East Africa in particular is quite dire, and it's largely a function of the energy story. Dams are running short because of the drought. They rely on hydroelectricity. All those factors coming together has created a bit of a problem. How bad is the situation?
Well, the situation is a bit difficult to judge at this moment. There are significant efforts that are being made by both the Tanzanian government, TANESCO, and all other interested parties, and sort of coming up with a solution that will provide long-term scenario where electricity is available to the key industries. What happened with Tanzania was a significant underinvestment in baseload power, which has left basically the hydropower stations, which succumb to the prevalent drought situation under with less capacity than expected. So there's significant efforts that are being made by both the Tanzanian government and other investors who are interested in investing in Tanzania in creating a situation where Tanzania will always have a significant amount of baseload power.
Right. Now, in Tanzania in particular, the drivers of the economy, manufacturing, mining and tourism, how have those key sectors been affected by the power shortages we're seeing at the moment?
Obviously, there's stunted growth within the mining and manufacturing sector due to the unavailability of power. What we have seen is mining sector participants engaging the government of Tanzania and the Ministry of Energy and Minerals in an attempt to create a situation where they can generate their own power and possibly sell some of the excess power to the national grid so as to power their operations in particular. This situation could be beneficial to the Tanzanian economy, basically, in the sense that the availability of power will obviously have a rollover effects on sectors such as tourism, agriculture and finance.
The costs to the economy, as you're saying, have not been fully quantified, but there are opportunities, and particularly opportunities for emergency power generators. Have they come to the party?
As of June 2011, the Tanzanian government flighted adverts for a bidding process for about 260 megawatts of emergency power. Some emergency power producers, such as Greco, which were already operating within Tanzania, have already stepped up efforts and have increased their capacity. We haven't had any reports from Tanzania as to how far they have gone in getting to that 260 megawatt target for emergency power. But there are significant opportunities, and there's lots of news of several emergency power generators going into the market.
In Tanzania, obviously, with the economy picking up, it's starting to translate as dividends for the consumer, a growing middle class, a more affluent rural community. That means electricity demand should peak. Can they cope, authorities, with the demand?
Presently, demand for electricity is growing at about 4.2% per annum, whilst obviously installed and available electricity capacity hasn't grown significantly in the last 20 or so years. Most of Tanzania's power plants are quite old, over 20 years old, and there's significant underinvestment in transmission and distribution infrastructure. So what's happening is you obviously have the growing middle class, the growing lower class, which is also demanding electricity at a very high rate. So essentially, Tanzania needs to address the situation presently so as to come to a point where when demand peaks, which of course it hasn't at this stage because it's still a growing economy, they have sustainable solutions that will provide power to the sectors that are most important and to the people that are able to afford it and are able to use it to the best of their abilities.
And finally, Vincent, the pricing of electricity is a very sensitive issue because we're told in Africa, the government, well, certainly in South Africa, the government's been subsidizing it for the longest time, and that situation is going to change, so hence higher tariffs. For investors coming into the sector, they want a return on investment, and that means higher tariffs. So effectively, what sort of pricing are we going to see, and what does that mean for the consumer and for business?
Ewura has been very vigilant within that space. What they have come up with is a more stringent set of requirements before they grant tariffs to TANESCO at present. They have what you call a cost of service study, which has to be undertaken by TANESCO, and they have to justify every single tariff increase. Of course, this is very stringent, but TANESCO did submit a 3-year tariff plan in 2010, of which they required a very high percentage, of which I think they got close to 96% of the required increase that they required. So going forward, Tanzania currently has an electricity tariff of about 8.6 US cents to the kilowatt hour. And going forward, obviously, they would expect to get to that theoretic 12 cents per kilowatt hour, which invites private sector into investing into the electricity sector. So going forward, we expect that EWURA will come up with a more effective tariff setting mechanism that will allow for private sector participation. We should also bear in mind that EWURA is obviously understaffed. They need to increase their staffing and increase their capabilities to be effective economic regulators of the Tanzanian electricity industry.
All right, thanks so much for your time, Vincent Maposa, who's with Frost & Sullivan, talking to us there about the energy situation in Tanzania.